So, welcome everyone. I'm Amir. Today I'm going to talk to you about Flutter, and this is like kind of a. Last year I did something similar, but this year, like I know people know more about Flutter, so that's a good thing. And Flutter is growing, so uh, Flutter is going to be more than just a mobile platform with how it's going. So. Okay, let's start. And a little bit about me. I'm from Knowit Mobile, Malmö. I'm an Android and .NET developer. When I'm not a Flutter developer, I worked with Stockholm's public transportation app, and currently I'm working on a project for IKEA. And I think you should notice that I've been working with Flutter when it was like in really early alpha stage. So I think you're in good hands when I'm talking about this. So basically, the whole point is that when you want to develop a system, mostly that consists an app and a website and other platforms, you usually want to have a high quality for user experience, like good graphics, good animations maybe or something like that, and you want it to be fast, like deliver in a really fast as possible. And you want to reach as much platforms as you can, and of course you want it to be affordable, but how things usually go is that you have to sacrifice at least one of these things to achieve the other three. This is the reason that Google introduced Flutter. Flutter is Google's SDK to create high quality, UI focused and multi-platform apps with single code base. So the development process will be really fast. Sorry. And it's a bit different than the current solutions that are multi-platform. And I'm going to show you why. Initially, Flutter only supported iOS and Android. It was a mobile-centric SDK and platform. But Google decided that that's not enough, and so mobile support is in a really stable stage, and updates are coming in. Web support is in beta stage, and also desktop support like 3 weeks ago. Official desktop support, of course, is in beta stage now, only for macOS, but for Linux and Windows it's coming. But that won't limit you to like port Flutter to other platforms. I will tell you why in the next slide. But these are the official platforms, so you can basically port Flutter to anything in one condition, and I will tell you why. So how Flutter works and how it's a bit different than the other multi-platform frameworks that is already there is that Flutter uses something like a rendering engine called Skia. It's a rendering engine written with C++, therefore it's portable. And technically, it's like how game engines work, but you're writing apps with Flutter. So the rendering engine is portable, and everything you write, every UI code you write, will paint on that canvas, on that rendering engine. And then when you can port the rendering engine to anything, basically you ported your code to anything. And the actual code compiles to machine code, so it's really low level, so you don't have to like have bridges or like JavaScript bridge in React Native, for example. You don't have those. It compiles to native machine code, therefore it's fast and again portable. And of course it uses a single code base, which is great since you don't have to write the same thing maybe twice or 3 times. Of course in theory, but for mobile platforms it's really like that, but for web and desktop there's like a teeny tiny bit way to go, but they're working on it. And the programming language that it uses, it's Dart, which is, you might not be familiar with it, but it's literally the fastest growing language in GitHub in 2019. So first you have Dart, then you have other stuff like Python or whatever. And it is because of Flutter and how it's growing, especially in community, and especially how like companies and people are getting results from it. Dart has some characteristics that was important that they chose this for Flutter. First of all, it has a really, really fast garbage collector and optimized garbage collector, which is important because everything you paint on that rendering engine, Skia, if something changes, the whole screen will be flagged to re-render. So all the objects should be, all the UI objects, usually how they work at least, they will garbage collected, they should be garbage collected, and then the new ones will take place, new ones instantiated. Therefore, there should be a really optimized thing to like pick up after itself, basically, the UI. And another thing is that Dart has two compiling modes, both just-in-time and ahead-of-time compilers. And the ahead-of-time compiler, of course, is for when you want to release your code, and it will compile down to machine code. But the just-in-time compiler is for debugging, and it enables a really cool feature called hot reload, which I will explain and show. And basically it allows you to, when you change something in your UI, just with an instant you can see it in your code, in your running app. And it is a stateful hot reload, so to say. Which means that your app will keep its state. So for example, I will show this in a bit, but if you change the color of something in your UI or arrange some UIs in a different way, you just have to hot reload, and then like in less than a second, the changes you made will take effect, and you won't lose state, and it's an instant. And it really helps for fast development and prototyping, especially. Another thing that Flutter has is platform channels, which is this means is that like you can have interfaces to access native abilities in each platform. For example, you want to access Bluetooth in iOS and Android and do something with it, or GPS data. Because there are native features, you cannot call them from Dart code directly, but what you can do is that like create what they're called a plugin. What the plugin does is, for example, for GPS, it writes the code in, like, you write the code in Android to gather GPS data, you write the code in iOS, and then have it in an interface in the Dart code. So basically you work with the Dart code, and then it generates, calls the GPS code, for example, in each platform. It has really powerful tooling, and it's growing really fast. For example, hot reload, that was one of the things that I told you. The IDE features that it has, it's really cool. And for example, again, 3 weeks ago in Flutter Interact, they just to show off, they started debugging an app simultaneously for 8 devices. And they just said this is just for the demo because we don't have any more room to fit more devices. And like you could have different breakpoints in each of the devices, and it would have hit that, and you could debug like really cool. And like it has layout inspector and everything, so it's really cool. And of course it has a great community, like the fastest one of the fastest growing that I saw in the past 2 years, and it's really growing. Like there will be different, like people are developing different plugins, different libraries to access different stuff, even UI frameworks. Like it's like it is because of the community that it grew so much. And actually the ports to web and desktop interfaces was actually from started from community, not Google itself. And speaking of that, big companies actually did some stuff. For example, we have Rive, which was formerly known as Flare, sorry, which is a really powerful and cool animation library, and you can access each of the bones and characters and everything. So this is actually a real time, not a real time thing, but you can actually do that, and many cool more cool stuff. Square, for example, is a payment gateway, and CodeMagic is the CI/CD. That is like the most popular one, at least. So that's one. And there are already a lot of applications that are written in Flutter. For example, we have the one on the left is Reflectly. It's an kind of a journal app that I think it's developed in Denmark, actually. They migrated from React Native to Flutter, and they were really happy, and there's a whole blog regarding it. The newest one that I saw was Stadia. I don't know if you know, but it's like Google's gaming streaming platform. And this one needs like heavy usage of Bluetooth, Wi-Fi connection, and all these kind of stuff because it has to connect to a controller and the controller to the server. So, and they used Flutter, so the platform channels that I talked about actually work. And also, like, this is some prototype thing that I just wrote for myself, for example. It's one of our in-house apps, so it can have an Android-like thing, or it can be like anything you want. So the UI can be platform specific as if you need it, or no, just a custom UI. And it's best. Flutter is best for creating custom UIs. That's the part where I finished talking and actually show you some stuff. So the first thing I wanted to show you is this is Android Studio, and I installed Flutter plugin in it. But you can also use Visual Studio Code, which has heavy support for the tooling, both of them. And as you can see, I have an Android Studio, but I'm writing an application for iOS. So that's kind of cool. And one thing you should know about Flutter is that like everything in it is a widget. Every UI element is a widget, even the material app. So the whole app is actually a widget. And if I like inspect it, it's, as you can see, material app extends stateful widget. So it's a widget. And another good thing about Flutter is that everything is open source. So the documentation is just there. So anything you want, if you have a problem with any widget or want to know what it does, you can just go into the code and you can see the documentation and the code. And of course you can change it as you like. So you have no restrictions in how you create your UIs. And so one thing, so this is the default application that when you create a Flutter project, this is what you get. And again, it has a lot of comments to get you started, but what I wanted to show you now is that the stateful hot reload, for example, as an example, and as you can see, like this button is a floating action button, which is here. And I forgot to mention that you can see the UI code is actually a declarative code. So there's no like XML file or storyboard. And when Flutter did this first, then Android and Swift iOS like saw how it can be great. And for example, we have SwiftUI now for iOS. And in Android it's called something, it's in beta stage, but I forgot the name. But you know, Flutter started it all, and I think it's doing it the best, in my opinion. But anyway, so for example, we have this button here, and if I click it, like you can see, the number will grow. So this is our current state. The number should be 4. But like, let's suppose I want to change the color, the background color, to like, let's say, green. And as soon as I hit Command S, the button changes color. And you can see it still have its state saved. And I can even press it even further. And like, again, if I Control S, it changed back the color. And it's not about just the color, of course. It's like you can also change the size, for example, which, like, let's give it a 30. I don't know if you saw it, but like even that could have changed. So like it's a little bit bigger now. This is the, okay. So this is the whole thing. Like this is the stateful hot reload. Of course, it will be really, really more apparent when you're actually developing something. So let's, I want to develop a music app that's also responsive to support the web. So I want to start with the icons, play and rewind icons. So I'm going to start from the beginning and create those. All right. Okay. So I should have done this. All right. So everything. So if I hit Control S now, I will get like errors, so it won't build. So I want to create it now, and I want the buttons to be at the center. So we have the center widget for that. So even being something being center could be a widget, and it accepts a child again, which is a widget. And for that, I want to have a row. And what row does is that it places items horizontally, one after another. So it's really easy to do this. And it has a children property. And you can say this is Dart code. So it's like you can pick it up if you know like C#, Java, like anything statically typed and object oriented. So it's not that different from other things. So let's to get started, let's create a play button. So I just have an icon widget, and inside I can have icons dot, and there's a whole bunch of icons already for me. So like icon dot play arrow, and it can have a color as well, which just give it like black, for example. I don't know why this is popping up. And then again, Control S, Command S, and then you can see it here actually. So I want it to be centered. So what I would do is that in a row it has another property, which is cross-axis alignment, and it can be center. And also the main axis alignment. Here we go. So now it's in the center. And let's add 2 more icons, of course. One should be the rewind back, fast rewind, and the other one fast forward, Command S. I should do this. Okay, here are buttons, but they look really ugly. So let's so I want to have a circle-ish box around it. So what I would do, this is one of the IDE features, so I want to have a box around it. So what I do is hit Alt Enter, and I will wrap it around a container here. Let's make it a bit more tidy. And a container is just as the name suggests, it's just a container and you can do stuff, different properties, apply different properties to this. And one of the properties is decoration, and we will use a box decoration for that. And again, oops, there we go. And you have a background, you have a border. Sorry. Let's see, shape, which will be a box shaped circle, and its color will be, let's say, colors dot again green. Command S. You see that, but I did it for the wrong button, but that's okay. We can just copy this. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Oops. All right, here, I guess. Okay, anyway. But you get the gist, I suppose. That's and there we go. Command S, there we go. And like you can play with these a lot. So I know it's like not the best at the moment, but let's suppose you want to say this like a text below this that says play. So all you have to do is like in here in this container, you will wrap this around another column, for example, and then the column will have again children, and then the second child of that column will be like just a simple text that says play, and it goes up, and there's a simple fix for that. You just set the main axis alignment again to center. So there we go. I know it's not a line, but just as for the presentation purposes, how like you can fastly prototype everything. But I do have you can have a lot of cool features and cool stuff, which I will show you. So this, when it is complete, it will be something like this guy. This was the thing I wanted to create, and this is actually running in the web. So I have the same code. Now it's running in the web, and using a really simple trick. This one is the code for that, and as you can see here, I'm saying it if it is like 720 independent pixels, then it will be counted as a large screen, and I will have this pane, like 2-pane UI here. But it's also adaptive and responsive, so if I do this, it will actually become like a responsive thing, and if I click on it, it will actually show it like this. But if I make it larger, I click it, it just applies it here. And for you to believe me that it's actually a Flutter thing running, the same fast reload thing, hot reload thing applies here, but in a really worse performance, because the web support is in beta stage. So for example, I know that's not the best to do it, but like again, that was the green color that I liked before. Command S. Okay, it hit hard restart. So. But anyway, so it's still a Flutter app, and you can run this on an iOS or Android or web or desktop as and again, it's really responsive, and like it's just one line of code to it. And in the web, it's not using Skia. It's actually trying to convert it to standard DOM elements, HTML elements, and if it was like really high animation stuff, it just uses Canvas. So that's something you should know. And back to our presentation. I said you can do like really cool stuff, right? I know the things I showed you aren't that much cool, but one thing you should know is that this whole presentation was actually written in Flutter. So it's actually a Flutter app in the desktop support, and this thing that you actually saw here, that was one of my prototypes, is actually live thing. So it's actually a Flutter app inside another Flutter app, because it's just a rendering engine. It's just a bunch of paint, how Flutter sees stuff. So that's one of the cool things you can do for presentations, at least. And thank you. Okay, if anyone has any questions. Okay then. Oh, so.
If you're gonna, okay. Translations. If you want to add text and have different languages, how does that work?
You don't have any like you do it yourself using normal classes. Basically, there's no official framework for that. It's like you're open to do anything you want. Yes.
How's state management for like a global state for the app?
So it's actually using like how by default it has a set state, so it's reactive kind of UI framework. They actually ported Redux to it at first, but now there are like two heavily used libraries called Provider, which is actually community based at first, and they're supporting it and using that. And the other one is like with streams, how it works basically. So it's a stream based state management, which is again official, and there's a whole documentation about it and everything. It's looking good, and like you can mix and match, so that's a good thing, basically. Okay. Yep. And thank you.